Hi, welcome. I'm Amy. I'm really excited to share some recipes with you today. These are great for fall, they're warming, comforting. I'm sharing homemade SpaghettiOs with mini meatballs. It's way quicker than it sounds, and simple chicken ranch wraps with fun toppings and a really juicy, tender, flavorful chicken. First up, let's make SpaghettiOs with mini meatballs. This one's so good.
I did this trick last time I made meatballs and it worked really well. I did use oatmeal and this time I'm using panko, but I'm gonna go ahead and put a quarter cup of panko and about a tablespoon of milk in this bowl. I'm actually also gonna add the egg because there's not a ton of liquid in here. So it's also one egg. And I'm gonna give it a stir and just kind of let it sit. This way the breadcrumbs kind of soak up that liquid and it makes the meatballs more moist. I did that last time, like I said, when I made meatballs, and the meatballs were so juicy. They were so good. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that again this time. I'm gonna let this sit, and while that sits, we're gonna go ahead and chop up an onion. So I'm just gonna dice probably half an onion. That's done. I'm gonna set that aside, and I have this garlic bulb. I cut off the root end, and now I'm just gonna go ahead and take some cloves out. It calls for 2 garlic cloves. I think I'll use 4. I've actually never done that before, but it worked at making the peel really easy and kind of like smashing up the garlic a little bit.
I will say I still prefer the ground garlic, even though I don't think it has quite as much flavor. Can't beat that convenience. Now let's get the garlic right into our bowl.
In an effort to add some more depth of flavor, I'm gonna add onion salt for half the salt and then just regular salt for the other half. The onion salt might have a little less salt than regular salt, but I think it'll still be salty enough. This is pepper.
Now I'm adding in basil. This is homegrown basil from my parents' garden. They dried it and crushed it up. I'm gonna just crush it up. I like it in a little bit smaller pieces.
A quarter cup of Parmesan. This is grated Parmesan. And I'm gonna go ahead and mix this in, and then we're gonna add the ground beef. Okay, in goes the ground beef. So to my pot, I'm gonna add a couple tablespoons of olive oil.
I'm just spreading it along the entire bottom of the pan so it's even.
And I'm gonna leave that right there. That way when my meatballs are shaped, I can go ahead and plop them right in the pan that we're gonna cook them in. I probably should heat the pan up first, but I just don't want to dirty another dish, and I don't really want to use a paper plate to set the meatballs on or anything like that. So I'm just going to do it this way. So I'm going to get this all mixed up, and then we're going to shape these into like 1/2-inch meatballs. These are mini meatballs, so this is going to definitely be the most time-consuming part of this recipe is just shaping these meatballs. I'm just going to use my hands, which I know I think it's so gross, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's just the easiest way to get everything mixed in. And I have read that we don't want to overmix meatballs because that makes them tough. I'm just gonna mix this until everything is combined.
Now I'm just gonna go ahead and form these in little balls. They're probably like a 1/2 inch to an inch. I'm really bad with measurements, but they were small. I had doubts that this would actually be better than just doing ground beef, but it was. It was very good. Totally worth it. Mini meatballs like this I think would be great for a party or gathering.
They're all shaped. Shaping them actually just took 5 minutes, so a lot quicker than I thought. I didn't measure them, I just eyeballed them. But now we're gonna get these cooking on the stove so they can brown up. I'm just gonna let these brown up for a couple minutes per side. They don't need to fully cook because they'll cook in the sauce later, but I just want them to be brown so they have a really nice texture. Crispy outside, tender, juicy inside is what I'm looking for. You might be able to hear the meatballs sizzling in the background, but my effort to chop everything right away kind of failed because I didn't realize that I also needed garlic for this sauce. I'm just gonna really quickly mince this garlic up as well. The garlic is minced, so I'm gonna go ahead and check on these meatballs to see if they're ready to be flipped. Oh, they're sticking a little bit, so they're probably not done. Since they're sticking, I'm gonna assume they're not quite ready. I have had some sticking, so I just kind of let it cook longer, and it's not getting a ton of color, but I'm impatient. So, but you can see this is kind of what we're looking for, but I think they're a little close together so they don't all have that color, but that's okay. So I'm gonna get the rest of them like flipped over. They don't have to be fully cooked just because I'm gonna cook them in the sauce. I just don't think I used quite the right pan because they're just a little tricky to work with. So they're not gonna be the perfect circles that I put them in here. This is my counter right next to the stove, and I'm gonna go ahead and put these like partially cooked meatballs right in this, on this paper plate. There's still a little bit of the meat stuck to the bottom, but that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and add the onion, and I'm gonna cook that until it's translucent just for a few minutes. I want a little bit more liquid in there, but I don't wanna add more oil, so I'm gonna add a couple tablespoons of broth. We're gonna use more broth in with the sauce in a few minutes. So I figured since I'm gonna have some extra, why not just use it to help get this unstuck from the bottom of the pan and just to cook the onions in, just so there's a little bit of liquid. It's been cooking for about 3 minutes, so now I'm gonna go ahead and add in the garlic. Cook that for another minute or so. It smells nice and garlicky. So now we're gonna add the liquid. This is 2 cups of chicken broth. It calls for beef broth, but all I have is reduced sodium chicken broth, so I'm gonna use that. And this is a 32-ounce jar of marinara. It calls for a 25-ounce jar. All I have is 32 ounce. I don't have fresh basil, but if you do, go ahead and use that. I'm just gonna use this same dried basil that I used before. And let's use parsley. It calls for fresh parsley again, but I just have dried. And this is 1 tablespoon of coconut sugar. Use whatever kind of sugar you have, or even maple syrup or honey, that would be good. I'm just gonna do a little bit of salt. It calls for a teaspoon of salt, and I'm not gonna put in that much. I'll taste it and I'll add more later if I need to.
I'm editing now, and I would say skip the salt. Just add it at the end if you think it needs it.
And it also says add Parmesan at this time, but I'm gonna wait and add that at the end. I've added cheese too early and it does a weird thing with the texture sometimes. And then once this simmers for a few minutes, we're gonna add in our pasta. You can see it's at a light simmer, so I'm gonna go ahead and add in the pasta. This is the kind of pasta I'm using. I find it at Kroger. I'm sure you can find it at other places. You can use a different shape. But I did actually just make another recipe. This is like the SpaghettiOs shape. I made a pumpkin, brown butter pumpkin SpaghettiOs. I'll leave that video linked below in case you're interested in checking that one out. Kind of a fun, different take on SpaghettiOs. But I'm gonna go ahead and stir this. I'm gonna stir this again pretty frequently because sometimes stuff sticks to the bottom of this pan. It's not non-stick, especially pasta. I'm gonna cook it for about 10 minutes and then add the meatballs in and the Parmesan, and then I'll cook it for maybe 5 or 10 more minutes just because I want those meatballs to be completely cooked and all the flavors to be, you know, good throughout everything. We want everything to have a really nice full flavor. Well, I'm actually just going to put these meatballs in now. And then I'm just gonna keep stirring. I test the pasta to see if it's cooked. I am gonna go ahead and just temp check a meatball just to see if that's cooked. I'm gonna put in some Parmesan, about 1/2 cup.
If you like this kind of recipe, pasta with red sauce and meatballs, don't skip it. Even if you use a different kind of pasta, use whatever kind of pasta you have. Even spaghetti would be good, but this recipe was so delicious. I loved the meatballs. They were so tender, and the flavor was so good. It was a tad salty, but skip the salt in the sauce part, but so, so good. This next recipe is so good and so easy. I was debating whether or not to even film it just because it's kind of simple and something you've probably heard of before, but there's just a different take on it. I think I get the best results when cooking chicken when I marinate the chicken first. So I am marinating it in Greek yogurt. This is full fat, plain Greek yogurt, olive oil, some garlic powder, and Montreal steak seasoning. It's so good. If you don't have it, you could just do like salt, pepper, and garlic. But I just go ahead and put that in a Ziploc bag and kind of squish it until all the ingredients are all over the chicken. And then I put it in a second bag, put it in the fridge, and then when it's dinner time, I'll go ahead and cook up that chicken. So I'm going to go ahead and cook it just on the stovetop. And I just put a little olive oil in the pan, cook it maybe like 4 minutes aside. These are chicken tenderloins. You could use cut up chicken breasts. You could bake the chicken if you'd like. But I actually love using chicken tenderloins or chicken breasts and cutting it up in little like bite-sized chunks. I don't like overcrowding the pan when I'm cooking up chicken, and I also always temp check it to make sure the chicken is fully cooked. I really don't want to deal with raw chicken. So I go ahead and do it in batches. It usually takes a few batches if I do like a pound or a pound and a half of chicken. Now let's prep the lettuce. I believe this is the only thing I have to cut for this recipe. You can't beat that. I think cutting is the worst part of cooking, but I do love to cook. But so I go ahead and I just bought this. I think it's called Little Gem lettuce. It's from Trader Joe's. You could use any kind of lettuce, even like pre-shredded lettuce would work great. I find this lettuce cuts really well, and I think romaine would as well. If you just hold it by the root and then slice it, and then you could kind of dice it almost. I like little tiny pieces of lettuce. That way I don't have long strands of lettuce coming out of my wrap. But I'm going to go ahead, cut it, put it in a towel to let it dry. This recipe is just simple yet delicious, and I thought I would show you all of the ingredients together. And this Grillo's pickle de gallo is so good. It has a tiny, tiny bit of heat, a great crunch, and it adds that nice like pickle vinegar flavor. So good. We really liked it. I'm also going to put some pumpkin seeds on top. You could definitely leave that off if you want. Or I think sunflower seeds would be good as well. Once most of the chicken was cooked, I still had one batch left to cook. I went ahead and cut the chicken. I did let the chicken rest for about 10 minutes because I've heard if you let meat rest, it kind of holds in more of those juices. And I do want the meat to be as juicy as possible. So I did taste it and at this point without putting it in the wrap, and I thought it was really good. That Montreal steak seasoning has just great flavor. There's like a tiny bit of spice. It's kind of peppery and salty and garlicky. It's just a really good seasoning. So I definitely recommend trying it. I'm not sure why it's called a steak seasoning. I don't think I've ever actually tried it on steak. Because when I make steak, I usually just use like salt and pepper, but very good. Anyway, the chicken was done, nice and juicy. I love doing a marinade with yogurt. I think it just really makes the chicken really tender. I think that's what the yogurt does, but I love doing that. Mayo also works well, but it is, more calorie dense. So I'm just going to assemble the tortillas. So I put down cheese. I did pepper jack for some and Monterey Jack and cheddar for some other ones because I didn't have enough of the Monterey Jack and cheddar. But I did chicken, the pickle de gallo, so good, the lettuce, the pumpkin seeds, and ranch. I just bought Primal Kitchen ranch, which I really liked. I thought it was really good. It kind of has a lot of flavor. It's not a very like mild dressing. But I don't have a ranch dressing, like a homemade ranch dressing that I love. If you have one, leave one in the comments below. I'd love to give it a try. I do have a Caesar dressing that I make homemade that I really like, but not a ranch. I hope you liked these recipes. Go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next time.